Hey YouTube. Well, I'm going to talk about Queen Sugar, Season 3, Episode 10. I don't know how many episodes this season has. I'm hoping it goes for at least 13. I think that's kind of it fluctuates. So I don't know how many, but it seems like it went 13 last year. Anyway, so it opens up with Nova. Nova is doing a reading. Looks like a classroom of some sort, maybe in a college, university. She's doing a reading. From what I can tell, it's from an excerpt from the project she's working on, the new novel, where she's talking about her family and also the people there at St. Joe. So she's doing this reading. Remy is a part of the class, are there to support her. She gets a big applause kind of thing. She's talking about her mother when she found out her mother was sick, and also her father. This is what this part of the book is about. So the next thing we see is the cops. The cops have interviewed one of the boys. Remember last week, Micah and his new friends, they accidentally torched this slave shack on this plantation, right? And slave quarters, slave shack. They torched it accidentally, right? So somehow or other, they found out about one of the kids. And they've interviewed him. He did not snitch. He didn't tell what was going on, but that plot thickens pretty quickly in this episode. The next thing we see, okay, Charlie has been wanting to deal with this dude, Colton. Colton she's that lady's nephew. He's a Landry. He's a nephew. He owns 10% of the company. The 10% that Charlie is interested in procuring. This is her first attempt at getting other shares other than her one share it took to initially get in the company, right? She sits down with him. He comes off very arrogant in the beginning, but I would say that he just folded too easily. I mean, all she did was mention some of his goings on in this other business he's involved in. The grandmother, or what's that other all these names, what's that boy's name? Jacob's mother provided her with information on Colton, her own nephew, right? Charlie is using it to blackmail Colton out of his shares. They don't make it clear here if she's just blackmailing him, give me your shares, or I'm telling, or she's just forcing him to sell his shares. Now, I'm thinking that since they don't want Charlie to be a villain here, they're offering to actually buy his shares. But they don't make that clear in this, at least not in this episode, right? I don't think they would have Charlie just go in there and blackmail this dude and say, give me your shares, or tell him about your shady shenanigans in this other company. He folds extremely quickly. Something about money laundering in some companies, some things that can get him in some serious trouble. So she uses it. And her plan is to get all of these shares. Now she's partnered up with this old lady who I guess to financially back all this. Although I think Charlie was in a position where she probably could do quite a bit of damage on her own. But now she's partnering with this Landry woman, even though they have not shown them getting along just yet. Last week, Charlie was very, very cold to her. We got the impression that she did not trust her. There was no understanding that they had an agreement. So, and we still didn't see that kind of scene in this episode, right? But she's using the information she got from her. So apparently there is a partnership going on with this old lady and Charlie. Next thing we see is Ralph. Now, I'm not wild about Ralph, you know that. But nobody can deny that Ralph has been a good father to this boy. He is a good father to him. And maybe this is the relationship that Ralph had with his father. It seems like he was close with his own father until he got in trouble, right? But anyway, it doesn't please even though I kind of felt like the kid should be with his mother, I wouldn't say that Ralph shouldn't also be a part of his life. But he's getting a visit now from social services or child services. And they brought a police officer with them. 1 cop and 2 workers. They want to interview him, interview the child. Ralph he's got that strong man attitude. But he does reluctantly allow this to happen. Of course, he thinks it's Charlie he thinks it's Darla who has sent them to his house. But that's not the case. Actually, it's Darla's mother is in town. And it becomes, even though she hasn't confessed, it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that she is the one who has sent Child Protective Services to this man's house. And they also come to visit Darla, but we'll get back to that. Okay. So Vi. Now Vi, she's here making pies with her assistant. This girl works with her, and she hears through the grapevine about Nova's article. It's apparently appeared in a paper in New York, in the New Yorker. This girl has found it. She's made a copy of it, and she lets her read this article. And I think it's based on the same information she was doing the reading about. Anyway, Vi, at first she's happy about it, but when she actually reads the content, she is livid. She doesn't like what she wrote. For some reason, Nova didn't tell her about it in advance either. So perhaps Nova knew that she wouldn't react to it well. But she's writing a true story. Now, if she's just going to give some fluff, some old Pollyanna kind of story, nobody's going to buy that. They want to hear the real story. So she's written about this man's depression, about what he went through as a single person trying to raise a family, and so forth, how close he came to suicide. Vi don't want to hear it. She's very upset with Nova, right? And she's going to confront her about this writing. Nova defends herself. I thought she did pretty good. Vi can be a stubborn woman. There's a couple of things in this episode she does that I'm not wild about, but she can be a very hard kind of a woman at times. Right. Now, obviously, she's going to come around to understanding Nova's point of view and all that kind of thing. But initially, she doesn't at all. She said, you fucked up and fix it. Okay. She didn't say the F word. Okay, so next thing we see, Mr. Prosper is in the bathroom. He's about to take a shower, and he has a fall in the bathroom. Somehow or other, he's able to call Charlie. I've fallen, and I can't get up. Because when she comes there, he said, I didn't mean for you to leave work. She came back to find him on the floor in the bathroom. Now, I'm not sure what his issue is. I know he had was a back problem or something with his hip, but he was scheduled for some kind of surgery. But I didn't get the impression that he had cancer or anything like that. So I don't know. He fell, and now she rushed him to the hospital. And he is canceled his surgery. Now, he makes a very good point, something I've experienced myself. I had a very good friend, older guy. He was 72 years old. He was going in for a surgery. He had some surgery about his prostate, right? We had lunch on a Wednesday. He said he was afraid about this surgery, but I didn't pursue it. I thought it was a simple type of a surgery. Anyway, that man went to surgery 3 days later, and he died. Totally blindsided me. I didn't think he was that sick. He died after the surgery. So what Prosper says is people my age, many times they don't survive the surgery. And he gave her an example of something that just happened just recently, a year ago or so. A man went in for simple surgery and died on the operating table. So that's a very real thing. I got to tell you, all this gives me pause because I'm 60 years old and I live alone. And I just had cancer a couple months ago. So this kind of pulled at me here, this thing about getting old and have someone to look after you. Fortunately, Prosper has Charlie. I think she does it in honor of her father. Prosper was his best friend and his 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 working foreman for years and years and years, and she's determined to take care of this man. Okay. Also, another thing happened in the hospital. So he's canceled the surgery. So I don't want to go through that. He's afraid that fine ass guy who he is, that Latin guy. I don't know if he's a doctor. I thought at first he was a doctor, but maybe he's a paramedic or something. I don't know, because he's not Prosper's doctor, but he's there in the hospital with Charlie. So they have another encounter. After he checks on him, he sits down in the hospital, in the visitor in the room next to him, and she says, "You don't have to stay." No, I want to. So I think this is going to be Charlie's love interest. It's not going to be Jacob. It's going to be this doctor or whoever he is. I don't know if he's a nurse practitioner or what he is exactly. I don't know if they ever said that he's a doctor, although I was under the impression that he was a doctor. So I don't know. Anyway, they don't get lovey-dovey. This is a serious thing going on with Prosper. He seems to be very sick. But we don't know what that is yet, because I don't think a hip replacement or his back would be potentially fatal. I don't know. All right. Of course, Ralph assumes that the people who called Child Protective Services was Darla, right? He calls her at work. She says, "No, I didn't do that. I would never do that." People don't they get so mad at Darla. They continually want to call her a crackhead, but the woman is doing all that she is supposed to do. You know, I mean, she's not just taking her son and leaving this man. She does not have any desire to just snatch this child away from Ralph. Although that is her son. So it is complicated. This situation is very complicated. But by everybody making Darla the monster, which she's not showing signs of being a monster, I think it's wrong. I don't think you can negotiate something as long as you're keeping that woman being the devil. Unless Darla does something that is devilish, her wanting to be with her son or have her son with her now that she's no longer a crackhead, as you guys call her, now that she's no longer sick, he has the natural desires now are coming back, and she wants to be with her son. I don't think that's an evil move. Anyway, and she has moved there and probably rented a house there, and she has a job there. So she's setting up roots there with Ralph. It's not like she's coming to town and want to take him back to D.C. Ralph is going to have to, they're going to have to share the custody of his child. You know, if they can be reasonable about it, work it out, that'll be fine. But now Darla got her mother. She's got her feet all in it now. Her mother's there to visit, and her mother is trying aggressively to take this child away from Ralph. She's the one that sent those people to Ralph's house with the police. Now the same people, one of the ladies comes to visit Darla to interview her, and Darla, okay, she understands now. This is who called them. You can see she has attitude with her mother. Tell her mother, we'll talk alone. Do you need her? Okay, it's just between me and her. You can go. Her mother just leaves her there, and they kind of leave it like that. She doesn't confront her yet. Next thing we see is this kid, Anthony. He's arrested. They come for him. Police down the halls, all the kids are in the aisle, and throws them against the locker. But that was not necessary. I don't get that part. They rough-hand him. All of them are probably equally as guilty. So now it's going to be a challenge to see if this guy, is he going to tell on his friends. However, just like they found out about him, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to find out about the others as well. If they investigate, it's easy to discover who he hangs around with like that. Shoe prints, shoe impressions, if they take it that far. But Micah is worried. I imagine all of them are worried. Except that little girl that's with them. She doesn't seem to fear it very much. But these people are all preparing for college. Supposed to be preparing for school. Micah's girlfriend, I forget her name. Micah's girlfriend, she is studying hard. She is working, busting her ass, trying to get grants for school, scholarships for school. She's working on her getting herself to the next level. He is not taking it seriously. He wants to be an activist, senior year of high school. Anyway, so she's always been leery of this crowd he wants to hang about with. His girlfriend is not interested in just hanging out with it like that. She would probably be very good for him if they partner up. She would probably be very good for him because she's a reasonable, rational woman, a young girl. Okay, so eventually he tells her that it was all of us. We were all there. And she is livid. She didn't understand this at all. So she confronts him, walks away from him, saying all you did was burn down our heritage, ancestral beginnings kind of thing. Not only is it that plantation's history, it's also our history. No matter you like the history or don't like the history, it is our history, and you just burned it down. Now, as far as I know, he didn't have a chance to explain that it was an accident, but it's still burned down. And these guys are all face the potential of going to jail. All right. Next thing happens. Prospers in the... Okay. We already talked about that. Okay, so Vi... Vi visits Darla's house where her mother is staying, and she confronts the mother. The mother doesn't seem to be aggressively attacking Vi, but she feels like when Ernest was alive, and Ernest and her were taking care of the kid, it was fine. They did a great job. Although I suspect it wouldn't be fine anyway once her daughter got herself together. Anyway, this, like I said, this is just a complicated, difficult situation. So she confronts the mother. She checks her. The mother says, I don't disrespect you. You guys did a great job. I appreciate it. She has been financially supporting the kid or helping out with the financial arrangement. But Vi has figured out pretty easily why she's there and who is starting all this trouble. She tells her, prepare yourself for a fight. Okay, I just don't think it's the right tactic. I do not think it's the right tactic. She could have sat down with Darla and talked reasonably, rationally. They could have figured out how to have joint custody with this kid. That's the way it should have happened. Putting horns on Darla is not helping nobody. And I don't know about too many courts that are just going to take this girl's child away from her because she had a drug habit before. From what I understand, the way it works is they temporarily take your children if you are a threat to the child or you're incompetent parent. But eventually those parents, they work their way back to getting their child. They've proved their stability. They've proved that all this stuff. And we already know that Ralph's not the real father. So, and Darla has not shown no signs of being overly aggressive here. She doesn't want to hurt that family. She did love them, although they turned on her. I'm still Team Darla. I think people, I think it's just wrong to charge people's past to them forever. I mean, how long is she supposed to pay? Even when you go to prison, eventually you get out. Correct? All right. So Ralph can be he can be forgiven for his sins, end up in prison, but she can't because she was. Anyway. All right. So there's no sweetness between those two, and Vi promises to fight her on it. They've already hired an attorney for Ralph. Next thing, Ralph's in the police station asking about his parole. He's about to get early parole. Is this going to affect it and all that? She has some snappy or evil woman who's there. She's a cop or parole officer. She says, no, we have to see how it turns out, how the accusations are and all this. Just nasty. But his cop friend is there. The cop friend who Ralph had since school, who was actually a gay man, who Ralph somehow helped him to get through the situation, encouraged him. They're old friends. So he tries to talk to Ralph about his attitude. Being an angry black man is not going to get you nothing. Nothing. You're just angry. You're too angry to negotiate anything or to have people to have sympathy for you. If you're going to scare them to death, I mean, because he's, like I said, he always seems to be on the very edge of about to go off. I'm not saying that Ralph is not a good father. That he is. But some of his attitude. So this guy tried to talk some sense into him about his attitude. Right? Next thing, Ms. Vi's on one. Okay. Okay, so Vi already went off on the mother, right? Now she wanted to have a word with Nova. How dare you, airing dirty laundry and all this. All she did was tell the truth. That's what's going to make her book interesting, is telling the truth. This fantasy that Vi wants to present of this, this perfect family and all that, it ain't gonna sell nothing. Nobody's interested in that, honey. They want the real deal, and Nova wants to tell the real story. Yes, we had problems. Yes, there were struggles, but that doesn't invalidate our lives. So Vi confronts Nova about her story. Nova tries to explain her end of it. I think she did pretty. I thought I already say this. I feel like I'm repeating myself. So they have two interactions. Let's assume I already talked about it. Anyway. And so, yeah, I think I already talked about that. Okay, so Vi. Okay, as the thing wind down, there's this is a pretty intense episode. Everybody has got issues this time. Micah, no, Ralph tries to explain to Blue about his record. Okay. So when these people were there, they interviewed Micah in a separate room. Blue in a separate room from Ralph Angel, but Ralph Angel saw him. Micah, I haven't had my coffee yet. Okay. Blue has been interviewed in a separate room from his father, right? But he overhears their conversation because the door is open and the rooms are adjacent. And he asked him why he was yelling when those people were there and why were the police at their house. And what is a record? And so Ralph has to explain to him about his prison time and how. So I guess Blue would have been a baby. He doesn't remember his father was not there at the time, but it was actually Ernest and Vi who were raising him as a baby. At some point, Vi turned Blue totally over to Ralph Angel, but at first it was all three of them. Anyway, he tries to explain all that. And he used the analogy of, when you did something wrong, how I give you a timeout. I got a long timeout. He had 4 years timeout. Okay, next thing, Hollywood tells Vi about Hollywood's been in the bad mood this whole episode. And at the end here, he tells Vi about this is the anniversary of his wife's miscarriage, his ex's miscarriage. Now, this is kind of a big deal because this was his one opportunity to have a child. He doesn't have any children, and now he's with a woman who is 60 years old, so she can't have children. So there'll be no children in his past, and he's still a relatively young man. I think he's 20 years younger than her. He's quite a bit younger than her. But he'll never have a family because he's going to marry a woman that can't have children, and this one opportunity was when his ex was pregnant, and she had a miscarriage. And so this is the anniversary. He said he's always blue around this time. She didn't realize that, right? That's why he's been moping around. Last thing we see, and I'm not sure about this. You guys tell me in the comments if you know. Did Nova and Remy just break up? The last scene is Nova and Remy are in conversation. They're talking about you're a good woman, you're a good man, and all those kind of things. but the harm we could cause to the family by us being together. It'll always be a hurtful experience, so forth. It sounds like a breakup. There's a hug, but no tongue kissing at the end of this speech. I mean, this monologue they have, and he walks out the door. Now, this is a recurring theme with Miss Nova. She has kissed about 5 of them away since we started this series. Anyway, I'm not sure. Does that mean that it is over? I got the impression that they are breaking up now because of to spare Charlie's feelings. All right? Okay, that was it. See you next week, people.